So people who meet me now or relatively recently are under the impression that I'm like good with people. And the several, let's say, non optimal people that I had in my life, they told me that I was like charismatic and, stuff like that. Like it was a bad thing. But the amazing thing is that for the majority of my life, I always felt like an outsider. I had this belief that I could only connect one-on-one really well or in small groups. But if it got to be like a group of about 5 people, I would feel overlooked and that I didn't have a voice and I didn't know. I could feel that I was separate. I could feel that I didn't have like any power in the group. I could feel that, people were just overlooking and not interested in what I had to say. And so that changed incredibly. And what happened was I had my son. And I was so frantic, and desperate, really, quite frankly. I wanted people to respond to him positively. I wanted people to accept him in ways that I never felt accepted. And so I really, went out of my way to foster connections with people in a way that I'd never done before. I think I had this subconscious idea that people would just like see that I was an amazing person with a good heart and that they would love me. And that is not how that worked at all. So I kind of, I shifted quite a bit. I started smiling at people. I didn't do that before because it was a, hostile resting face, quite frankly, is a protective mechanism. Because if you just walk around as a young woman smiling at people, you end up dealing with a lot of just terrible behavior and it's exhausting. So you shut it down. You shut down that you do not come across as a receptive person, because you don't want to receive that stuff. People that feel entitled to your attention, to your positivity, to your energy, to your, aesthetic and appearance and all of that. So the great thing was something about having a baby kind of made me invisible to the assholes, like the gross guys. And so I suddenly felt very comfortable in a way that I never had felt comfortable before. And so I was smiling at people. I was remembering their names. I was taking care to remember things about them. I would really try and facilitate their connection with my son, and like remind him like that this person was important and why. And that ended up really translating into my ability to connect with other people. And quite frankly, the thing that's been the most successful has been taking myself out of the equation. So much of before was me trying to meet this need for validation, was me trying to be seen by other people. And having my son basically made it that was not my goal when interacting with people. Like, I wanted them to interact with him. I wanted them to focus on him and for basically his experience in the world to be very positive, that he would have this expectation that people would see him positively and interact with him positively. That's an incredible foundation to have. So I shifted from this very needy place of me personally feeling like I needed to be validated and I needed to be supported and I needed to be seen, and I'll fucking let that shit go. And I started, focusing on the other person. And, of course most people love babies. So it was, it was easier than I imagined. I spent decades struggling, always feeling like the outsider, always feeling like I never had a handle on how to interact with people. Even my ex, it's like, he said it to me in a negative way. Like there was something negative about me, that I was able to do this, and he was like, I don't know how to do this. And somehow it was my responsibility to facilitate that. But, we kind of all have to, walk our own path and take responsibility for our interactions with other people. So, now I move through the world and I know how to make connections with other people. And I know how to meet them where they are. And I know how to share my light and, my loving energy. And people tend to really respond to that. I did make a mistake. I didn't realize, I needed to pay attention to who was giving back to me. So many people are very happy to be around your energy and be around your light and not necessarily contribute. I finally learned like there needs to be an element of reciprocity. But, just sort of in general, once you take your needs out of the picture and you can just see the person in front of you, there's this kind of like multi-sense of a person. You can see them as they see themselves, as their best self, as they hope other people see them. And then you can see them kind of like how they are, and maybe that's not always meeting this. Maybe that's only meeting this sometimes. And you can also, pay attention to the ways that maybe they fall short. But it's a much more complete picture of a person. People really, really crave being seen. They really crave, that you're fully present with them. So something that I kind of just stumbled into accidentally turned out to be one of the most transformative things in my life. And I'm also going to say, like, getting older has really facilitated this, because I can't express to you the amount of, let's go with sexual harassment that ladies have to put up with. Especially if you're a young woman and you've developed, like, you're like 11, 12, 13, and grown guys just, and the world doesn't feel safe. So becoming a mother made the world feel safe in a way that I'd never experienced before, and I'm really enjoying being almost 40 because, I don't really get that attention anymore. And so, I feel the relief of being able to be myself. This is the person I've always been. I just shut that shit down because it wasn't safe to be that way in the world. So I kind of wanted to explain, because so many children of particularly who experience child abuse, they go into the world with these weird ways of interacting with people. They don't know how to interact with people. And it quite frankly, it doesn't take much for like other kids or adults or whoever to kind of go, this person is weird, like stay away. And then that just reinforces the isolation and the lack of self-worth and, the what's wrong with me. If you haven't had people interact with you in a normal, healthy way, going into the world where other people are being normal, like it doesn't compute. You're going to be that person telling stories like that you think are hilarious, and then you'll notice everybody kind of just pauses and looks at you. You're like, oh, maybe this isn't normal for everybody else. This, what I thought was a hilarious antic from my childhood, and you go, oh, I guess that's abuse, and I didn't even know it. So connecting with people, once you take yourself out of the equation, does a whole lot. But that's only half of the solution, because the other half of the solution is we matter too. you matter too. You know, so if you're in a dynamic with somebody and you're matching them and you're being present for them and all this stuff, but they're not being present for you, they're not matching you, they're not interested in you, Houston, we have a problem. You know, like, if we, I don't want to say give away, but if we aren't paying attention to who we're focusing on and giving our attention to and our energy to, we're going to end up giving it to people that are so happy to take and take and take and take. But they aren't giving. And they might think they are, but they're not. And that's not a healthy place to be. So it's just something to consider. You know, taking yourself out of the equation, one, but the other party needs to put you in the equation too. And that's how kind of the deepest connections I've ever had. Looking back on it, that's how they were formed. You know, I wasn't coming from a place of needing validation. I wasn't coming from a place of, you know, trying to get them to see me a certain way. You know, I was focused on them or the conversation or whatever, but they too were focused on me because they're interested in me as a person. You know, we matter too. Anyway, hope this makes sense, and I'll talk to you next time.